All right, well, hey everybody, Rob from Feedbackwrench. Today I want to talk about something a little bit different than usual. Here are some things that you should know if you are preparing for end of life, or if you are in some sort of situation where you're suddenly thinking about your mortality and you're wondering what should you do when it comes to your finances, insurance, but as a business owner, what are some things you need to do? Now, this is really close to me because a couple of years ago, my grandmother was not in the best of health, and she had some assets that were non-traditional assets. You know, any asset that has a beneficiary to it, like life insurance, a transfer on death, or a TO, whatever, bank account is pretty easy. Your primary residence is still pretty easy, but not if you're the last of a couple. But if you have things like a business, or if you have land, if you've got investment properties, I tell you what, things get quite a bit more complicated. And if you have a business partnership, you'll want to think about this as well. So this is all about estate planning, right? And estate planning is one of those things that you tend not to ever think about it until all of a sudden somebody passes away. Now, when it comes to estate planning, I want you to think about something. If you're married, really what's going to happen is your spouse, for the most part, is going to have a very easy time having all the assets pretty much transfer over to you. Now, that's just a broad statement. Generally speaking, if one of you passes away, the spouse, if you're legally married, is going to become the owner of all of these joint, they're the beneficiary to everything. It's not that complicated, right? A couple of things that will pop up is, remember that one of your Social Security checks is going to disappear now. Luckily, you get some flexibility. Also, if you had a pension, suddenly that pension might have some impact. There's a lot of people that when you choose a pension, usually you either choose to take 100% of your pension amount, or there's these survivorship benefits. And for those of you that don't know this, your mom or dad or grandparents might be facing some incredible changes when it comes to their income when one of them passes away. They can have a massive change in their Social Security and a massive change in their pension. So you'll want to pay attention to that. Another caveat that happens is if one spouse passes away, they also, it changes for their provisional income amount. And just long story short, they're now instead of being a joint tax bracket, they're in a filing single tax bracket. And when you have that, there's a ton of taxation that might happen. So you need to really be cognizant for if you have a parent or a grandparent one of them's going to pass away, Social Security, pension, and then think of taxation. That tax thing can really blow up in people's laps and they don't even know about it. So that's the first thing to remember, is that your income's obviously going to change. Normal assets, if they have a beneficiary, are pretty easy. Businesses, land, farmland, stuff like that, that's more difficult. And when you pass away, you're going to be introduced to something called probate. Probate is basically the system in which a group of attorneys, a probate attorney, comes and takes all of your assets, and then they have to post that you passed away in a public newspaper in order for creditors to come in. And, you know, if the creditor is owed money, they need to be able to know that somebody died. And if they need to be in part of the estate conversation, they're going to be. So probate is this weird process that kind of takes a long time, and it's very public. It kind of takes all your assets and shows it to some people, and it's kind of a pain. The main thing that we noticed going through probate is that these attorneys that are helping you, some of them are very helpful, but others of them, what they're trying to do is to try and keep control. And anytime you have a conversation, a question, or a need, they're trying to get billable hours out of you. Classic example. Oh, excuse me, I got a dry throat here. Classic example. We had farmland. Long story short, my grandma died. I had contacted one of the highest producing farm realtors to take a look and do an analysis on this land. He went in, did an amazing job, and brought us an analysis free of charge because he wanted to earn our business. We contacted the attorneys and said, hey, we like the idea of selling. It sounds like we're in this position. We don't want to wait. We'd like to sell now. The attorneys charged the estate thousands of dollars. And you know what they did? They went and asked the exact same realtor who actually did it for free and then charged the estate a ton of money for their time and for the assessment. They kind of screwed us. It was really slimy. The point is, attorneys get in this, they only get paid hourly to process things and write documents and go to court. So they're trying to get billable hours out of you. Instead of going through probate, what's better is to do a trust. If you go contact an attorney right now, you should work towards an estate plan, including a trust, because rather than going through probate, a trust is going to basically fast forward everything, and you will have your will, or your will. This is different than a will. A will puts things through a probate. A trust is totally different. Basically, those assets can go to the right people. You can put strings attached to certain wishes that you have. Maybe you have some inheritance that's going to get passed on and you don't want your child to have access to it maybe till they're 25. You know, maybe you've got a 16-year-old granddaughter that might get $100,000. Maybe she shouldn't touch that till she's 25. The way you would do that is doing a trust. If you contact a good estate planning attorney, you should be able to get a great trust written up for you and your family, including some other things, your medical documents, for between $500 and $3,500, somewhere in there. So I recommend doing that as a family. All of you baby boomers out there, you should sit down with your spouse, with your kids, and talk about what's going to happen and what medical directives you want. Because the same conversation with a trust, you should be creating medical directives. What if you are in a coma? What happens if you need to be resuscitated? Who's going to be making the decisions? What are your wishes? What happens to your business? What happens to your estate? There are so many decisions that you will get walked through by a good estate planning attorney, and they'll do that through a trust. I really recommend checking out a trust. I want to move really quick here. The last thing is if you have a business and you're in a partnership, doggone it, you better talk to an attorney. You have got to have the conversation of what happens when one of you dies and you own that thing 1/4 each. If there's 4 of you, if you're 50-50, seriously, it's not just about, oh, well, I'll take care of it. Your spouse might need the income from that business because rather than having a big 401k, you have ownership in a business. It's a different type of asset. You need to have conversations. You might want to think about having some life insurance on each other, key man life insurance, where if your partner dies, your spouse, you get the life insurance amount. So you take out an insurance policy on your partner. So if your partner dies, you can pay the spouse to buy out their side, so that the spouse doesn't have to make some decision to come work in your business. The spouse doesn't have to sell their shares. You don't have to come up with cash. Yes, the life insurance is expensive oftentimes, but you'll be able to find an insurance guy ready to sell that to you. So that would be the last thing. If you're a business owner in a partnership, you need to think through some of that stuff. And boy, I tell you what, live and be present with your family. Entrepreneurs, we can very easily bring work home with us at night. It's hard for us to shut it off. It's hard for us to not be pursuing our passions. And for me, my faith in Jesus is number one. And what that means is I truly believe, whether you do or not, I believe that I have to answer to Him when I die. And I need to place my faith and trust in Him, have a relationship with Him, and love others. So loving your family and loving the people around you is incredibly important. And entrepreneurship sounds great in a lot of forms. I love it, but it's also hard, and it can take a toll on your family if you're not careful. So that'd be my advice for anybody when you're looking at estate planning. Hope that's helpful.